The Dallas Cowboys are entering one of the most fascinating transitional off-seasons we've seen in years, and for the first time in a long time, there's a sense that something is shifting inside that building. Not a complete philosophical overhaul, not a reckless spending spree, but something more subtle and, in many ways, more dangerous for the rest of the league. This is a team that knows exactly where it failed, and now it's trying to surgically fix those weaknesses without abandoning its long-standing identity. And that identity still revolves around calculated aggression. Because if you look closely at everything Dallas has done so far, the moves tell a very specific story. This isn't about headlines. It's about structure. It's about raising the floor of the roster while quietly positioning themselves for a much bigger swing when the moment is right. The trade for Rashawn Gary might be the clearest example of that mindset in action. When the Cowboys failed to land a superstar like Max Crosby, they didn't panic. They pivoted. They found a player who brings real value, especially against the run, and they acquired him at a fraction of the cost. But here's where it gets interesting. Gary is not a traditional number one pass rusher. His entire career has shown that he thrives when he's not the focal point of protection schemes. That creates a very specific ripple effect across this defense. Because now the Cowboys are building a front that looks more balanced, but not necessarily more explosive. Gary gives them consistency. He gives them edge-setting ability. He gives them reliability against the run, which was desperately needed after a season where Dallas ranked near the bottom of the league in run defense efficiency. Teams figured out the blueprint. Control the clock. Run the football. Keep Dak Prescott on the sideline. And it worked over and over again. So this move is not just about adding talent. It's about correcting a fundamental flaw that defined their season. But it also exposes another issue. If Gary is your complementary rusher, then who is your true game wrecker? That question still doesn't have a clear answer. Donovan Ezeruaku has flashed potential, but relying on him to immediately become that elite presence is a gamble. And in today's NFL, if you don't have a dominant pass rush, your defense is always going to be one step behind. That's why this offseason can't be evaluated in isolation. Every move Dallas has made is clearly connected to what they plan to do in the draft. And the draft is where this entire strategy either comes together or falls apart. Before we even get there, though, look at how they've approached the secondary. The addition of Kobe Durant might not have made massive headlines, but it could end up being one of the most impactful signings of this entire offseason. This is a player coming off a postseason run where he elevated his game at the highest level, showing ball skills, instincts, and confidence that suggest he's ready to take another leap. But again, there's context here. Durant is on a one-year deal. Darren Bland has injury concerns. Siobhan Revel is still an unknown. This isn't a solved position. It's stabilized, not secured. And that distinction matters because it tells you exactly how the Cowboys are thinking. They're not locking themselves into long-term commitments unless absolutely necessary. They're buying flexibility. And flexibility is power when you're heading into a draft with multiple high-value picks. Right now, Dallas holds 2 first-round selections and an additional third-round pick acquired in the Osa Odigizua trade. That kind of capital gives them options. They can stay patient and address multiple needs, or they can get aggressive and move up for a true difference maker. And if you've been paying attention to how this roster is being constructed, the aggressive route feels more and more likely. Because this defense doesn't need more average players. It needs impact. It needs speed. It needs someone who can tilt the field. And that's where a potential move up the draft board becomes so intriguing. Imagine a scenario where Dallas packages picks to go get one of the top pass rushers in the class. Suddenly, Rashawn Gary slides into the role where he's most effective. The pass rush becomes layered. The defense becomes unpredictable. And everything starts to make sense. But here's the catch. That kind of move requires conviction. It requires the front office to step outside its comfort zone. And while this offseason has shown more activity than usual, the Cowboys are still operating with caution. Even their biggest signing, Jalen Thompson, while significant by their standards, barely cracks the top tier of spending across the league. This is still a team that refuses to fully dive into the deep end of free agency. And that brings us to the most important question surrounding this entire offseason. Is this real change, or is it just the illusion of change? Because on the surface, it feels different. The Cowboys are making moves earlier. They're targeting specific needs. They're adding proven players instead of relying solely on internal development. But when you zoom out, the spending remains conservative. The contracts are short-term. The risk is controlled. They're still wearing that life jacket. Now, if you're enjoying this kind of deep breakdown and want more content like this covering every move, every strategy, and every hidden detail shaping the Cowboys' future, make sure you subscribe and stay locked in, because this offseason is far from over and the biggest decisions are still ahead. One of those looming decisions revolves around the linebacker position, which might be the most glaring hole on this entire roster right now. The Cowboys missed out on several top targets in free agency, and what's left on the market is far from ideal. Veterans with mileage, players coming off injuries, or guys who simply haven't been consistent. This is what happens when you wait. And now Dallas is in a position where they either have to take a calculated risk on a declining veteran or once again rely on the draft to fill a critical role. That's a dangerous game, especially at a position that requires leadership, communication, and immediate impact. Because linebacker isn't just about talent. It's about command. It's about being the heartbeat of the defense. And right now, that heartbeat is uncertain. Meanwhile, on the offensive side of the ball, the Cowboys made a move that might go under the radar, but could prove incredibly valuable over the course of a long season. Adding Matt Hennessy gives them something they've lacked at times in recent years: reliable depth on the interior offensive line. This is a player with starting experience, strong technical ability, and the kind of football IQ that allows him to step in without disrupting the flow of the offense. And for a team that has dealt with injuries up front, that kind of insurance is critical. Because the reality is simple. You don't make a playoff run in the NFL without depth. And that's really what this entire offseason has been about for Dallas. Not just adding talent, but building a roster that can survive the grind of a full season. A roster that doesn't collapse when one or two key players go down. A roster that can adapt. Even the addition of a quarterback like Sam Howell fits into that philosophy. It's not a flashy move, but it's a practical one. It's about having options. It's about protecting the team from worst-case scenarios. Everything is connected. Even the improvement in their Super Bowl odds, moving from 17th to 16th, might seem minor, but it reflects a broader truth. The Cowboys are trending in the right direction. Slowly, carefully, but deliberately. And that might be exactly how they want it. Because while other teams are making massive, headline-grabbing moves, Dallas is quietly constructing something more sustainable. Something that doesn't rely on one or two stars, but on a complete, balanced roster. The question is whether that approach is enough in a conference loaded with elite quarterbacks, explosive offenses, and aggressive front offices. Because at some point, being careful isn't enough. At some point, you have to take a swing. And that moment is coming. The draft is going to define this offseason. It's going to determine whether all of these calculated moves come together into a legitimate contender or whether this team once again finds itself just outside the elite tier. They have the picks. They have the flexibility. They have the opportunity. Now they need the courage. Because if the Cowboys truly want to change their narrative, if they truly want to break through and become a real Super Bowl threat, they can't just be better. They have to be bold. And as we watch this offseason unfold, every move, every trade, every draft selection is going to tell us exactly who this team really is. So the question isn't just what the Cowboys have done. It's what they're willing to do next. And if you want to stay ahead of every twist, every rumor, and every game-changing decision as it happens, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because this story is just getting started, and the next move could change everything.